Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Mackmyra Swedish whiskey tasting. I'm Rich Micky, one of the brand ambassadors for Mackmyra in the UK, joined, as I always am, by my friend and colleague, Micky. Good evening, Mick. You all right?
Good evening, Rich. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and whoever else is watching.
Yeah, lovely stuff. I'm glad to have you back again, Mick. I'll say, thanks, as Mick said. Hello to everyone that's attending. Thank you for coming to join us. If you've never been on a virtual tasting before, curious how they'll work, how they'll proceed, this is how we usually move forward. An introduction into Mackmyra, a bit of the history, a bit of who Mackmyra are, how it all began. We'll have, I think we're going to be anyway, sort of roughly an hour or so together tonight. So we'll have a little over 10 minutes per dram. So no need to pour the entire 50 ml or 5 cl sample. I tend to, Mick, I know you do the same as well on tastings that we attend, not host, pour a bit and then come back to a bit later on as well and sort of see how I feel about it a bit later. So, and if you have poured one of the drams in its entirety already, don't worry too much. Maybe we'll sort of slow down for you a little bit if you let us know. So we'll discuss each whiskey in detail as we go through. Please do comment and let us know any thoughts you might have on the whiskies themselves or on Mackmyra, any questions you might have as we go. Birthday shout outs, anything like that you want mentioned, pop it in the comments and we'll try and make everything as interactive as we possibly can. Good evening there. So the first one up. I think so. Mick, running order, what order are we going to have the whiskies?
So first off the rank this evening, we're going to start with Brooks whiskey, and then we're going to nicely go into our Mac, and then we'll hit up our newest seasonal, Björksav, and then we'll go into svensk ek or Swedish oak, and then we will end lovingly with a nice smoky barbecue note with svensk rök.
Lovely. Yeah, looking forward to that one as always. A nice anchor at the end there. We always suggest having a glass of water on hand. If you haven't got one, we'd recommend going to get one now, just for even sort of cleansing the palate to a degree between whiskies, but also staying hydrated throughout. Remember, please drink responsibly. And Mick, offers we have, we do have, but what is the offer for this evening?
So this evening, ladies and gentlemen, if you really enjoyed the whiskies, especially the star of the show, if you were, with the Björksav, you could buy a full bottle of Björksav and get one of the Core Range bottles at 40% off. And that's using the code Björksav40. Don't worry about the umlaut above the O's or anything like that. Just straight away off the bat, as you can see scrolling across your screen at the moment, is Björksav40. So BJORK SAV40. No umlauts, no nothing like that. Just all in capitals, and away you go. And that's available from now until midnight tonight, guys.
Perfect. Yeah, and on the umlaut note, if anyone does know how on a British keyboard to put one of those easily in, please write in the comments and let me and Mick know, because in all of our internal emails we just use a straight up normal O. So any tips would be welcome. Thank you.
Or I have to go into settings, change the Swedish keyboard, come back out, type that quick word, put it back in again. But anyway, I'm sure there's a faster way of doing stuff. But still.
Well, hopefully someone can give us a tip this evening. So also in the comments, we'll just say, let us know if this is the first time you've ever done a whiskey tasting or a virtual whiskey tasting, whichever one it might be. Have you come across Mackmyra before? Have you heard about us? Have you ever tried it? Just so that we can get a gauge of who might be in the audience with us this evening. If you're open to sharing anyway, and letting us know, and then we can sort of try and tailor what we do a little bit and cater towards you a bit. So I'd say please feel free to pour some Brooks whiskey, as Mick is doing now. Mick's going to lead us into a bit of a brief history and intro into Mackmyra, and then we'll move into talking about Brooks whiskey in a bit more detail. But please charge your glasses with a piece of Brooks whiskey, but not the whole 50ml necessarily, unless you are feeling both thirsty and responsible, of course.
That's the key word.
So Mick, over to you for a bit of history, please.
Fantastic. So bear with me for a couple of minutes while we do a bit of the history stuff, so you get to know us and what we're all about that little bit more. So we are Sweden's first modern single malt whiskey. There was one a good few years ago, but you have to read up on some history and stuff like that about that one. We were conceptualized around the dinner table in 1998. We first began producing to become a reality in 1999. So we were founded by 8 founders that went to school together. Yeah, and we were founded on the 3 principles that we still stick to today, and that's Swedishness, innovation, sustainability. That should become more apparent as we start talking through the drams, and we give you a bit more history about some of the distilleries we've been in and all that sort of good stuff. So we've been in 3 locations. That's split in our formative years up until about 2002. We were in our founders' sheds and a wee mock-up, basically, using like a wee hand-built. And then we moved to our first grown-up distillery in 2002 at the Brooks distillery at Mackmyra Brook. So it's actually based on a real place. Absolutely beautiful surroundings. It's just in between two rivers there. Absolutely fantastic. And then in 2011, we moved to our new home, or hopefully our forever home as well, at the Grythyttan distillery in Järva. So just about 15 to 20 miles away from the Brooks distillery. So we've got warehouses as well all over Sweden. We've got some cool ones on islands at the top of a mountain, which actually looks a bit like a James Bond baddie's lair. Phenomenal. And our main maturation warehouse, so that's our island warehouse. They used to store torpedoes in there for the Swedish Royal Navy. I mean, how fantastic is that? Something else that's going to make your head go bang now, and that's our whiskey. But in a good way, and our main maturation warehouse is the Bodus mine, 50 meters below ground, an ex-iron ore mine, and that's where the majority of our whiskey maturation takes place now. Our master blender, or our chief nose officer, to give her official title, is an absolutely fantastic woman called Angela Dorazio, and she's the mastermind behind all of our whiskey. She's the second ever female to join the Whiskey Magazine Hall of Fame, and that was back in 2019. Honestly, the stuff that woman does is fantastic. As hopefully you all know anyway, from hopefully most of you have tried us previously. If not, then you're going to get to know how absolutely fantastic she is at her job this evening. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I've got faith though. So we've got a few frequent flyers in. So good evening, Phil. Good evening, Tamara. Good evening, Bully. How are you guys? Glad you can join us. Evening, George. Brilliant. So we've got 3 key ranges. We've got our core range, which we're going to go through all 4 of them this evening. We've got our seasonal range, which will be dram number 3 this evening. We release 2 of those a year, spring, summer, and autumn, winter. And then we've got our moments range, which is our premium luxury range. That's one of those 1 dram for a celebration every once in a while type of drams, But we'll expand a little bit more on that with each dram. So without further ado, Rich, let's talk about the first dram.
Do it. Brooks whiskey. So this is the bottle in question now, and it's full. Well, not quite full, half empty, or half full, maybe full, but in its 70 centilitre size. We'll talk about the liquids, obviously the most important thing. But whilst I am holding the bottle up, I'll just say the bottle's decorated with lots of bits of Mackmyra's history, so you can just about make out there. Hopefully, that's the Brooks distillery. The distillery that Mick said we moved into in 2002. on the side here, the Gravity distillery, a sort of cross section of the Gravity distillery, sort of ground floor being here, top floor 35 meters up being there, and production going, one floor down with each step. Yeah, and lots of little orange midges that you might be able to, you can just see one there perhaps, that little orange speck. Mick, do you want to just say quickly what Mackmyra translates into?
So Mackmyra sounds beautiful to the ears, and it's nice. It's lovely to say for us as well. Unfortunately, it is a rough translation, okay? It's not a direct translation in the modern language. It is more of a rough translation from some of the older language in Sweden. So you can break it down into two, Mack and Myra. So Mack basically stands for annoying insect or the midgie, basically. And then Myra is like mire or bog. So basically, Mackmyra translates to midge bog. It doesn't sound as romantic now, so we do like to maybe not point that out as much. So we'd like to stick to the Mackmyra as opposed to Skål and enjoy your midge bog,
Indeed, yeah, we don't think we put it on much of the marketing, but Mick and I do like to talk about it in tastings because it tickled us when we first found out about it. So we'd like to share a bit of levity at the beginning, especially as we're all getting warmed up. So so Brooks Whisky. So the whiskey itself within 41.4% ABV. This was our, well, not quite our first core range bottling that came out, but in essence, it more or less sort of is now. That first core range bottle was only on sale for what, Mick, five or 6 years, I think, and this first one was edition. Out.
Yeah, first edition. I think it went through 3 iterations of first edition before it changed over to being Svensk Ek, but that's another dram later on.
Yeah, further down the line, that one. But so Brooks Whisky came out a better part of a decade ago, and has been there a stalwart for us sort of ever since. So a number of different casks have gone into its makeup. Mickey spoke about Angela Dorazio, who's our chief nose officer. She's the person who decides which casks to mix together in which quantities to then release as an expression of us. And in many cases, the cask recipes, we would call them, so the combination of casks, can be relatively complex, at least definitely compared to whiskies. If you're more familiar with drinking sort of Scotch or Irish whiskey, where most of that whiskey will have either been in one cask or maybe a second cask for a finishing period or a double maturation. But in our case, Angela sort of just finds in her lab, in her secret lair, when she's creating whiskies, just makes these concoctions and whatever she lands on that she thinks is nice and works and is a good representation of what we do in the whiskey that we have, it gets bottled and released. So on that note, the cask recipe for this, we've used, the majority of which we've used is 200 litre first fill ex-bourbon casks. We've used some 100 litre first fill Swedish oak casks, and we'll talk in great detail when we get to the Swedish oak or the Svensk Ek about the properties that you get from there. 100 litre first fill sherry casks, and then 200 litre ex-bourbon again. But these casks contained our smoke tail recipe. A smoke tail sort of distillate, the spirit, which is something that it's somewhere between, we make a peated spirit and an unpeated spirit. This sits somewhere between the two. It's the first few distillations that we run through the stills after having done peated whiskey, peated spirit for 6 months or so. We'll then not clean the stills out so that there's some smoke residue left, and that comes through. So if anybody has, and I hope I haven't spoiled it for anyone that hasn't written any notes or anything yet, but if anyone has detected any smoke in here, it is present. Mick and I have had too much potent smoky whiskey in our time, we think, or we're just terrible at picking up on delicate smoke, one of the two. So we've never been able to find it, but relatively often. Yeah, we'll have somebody write in the comments or put their hand up, and when we're doing an in-person tasting, and say, "Oh, I can find some smoke in there," and there is a little bit in there, just for a little bit of balance of things as well. So, Mick, I'll say to everyone watching at home, if anyone wants to pop tasting notes, anything like that, in the comments, please do let us know, and we'll have a look at them, see what people are thinking. But Mick, what sort of things do you usually find in here? I know one that you're going to say, but
It's literally going to be like one that's going to stream off my tongue, Rich. Foam bananas all day, every day. I just it's just great. It is one of those childhood memory things. Obviously, I drink whiskey at the same time I was eating foam bananas when I was a kid. But no, that the nose on that, so you get a slight bit of the alcohol, which is that sharpness from that you get on the foam banana as well. But that like fake foam banana or that fake banana sort of like nose is, and I really enjoy that for that as well. That's my biggest, always, every single time.
I think this is foam bananas. I definitely concur with that. Nose and palate both for me in my case. I think this is we refer to this quite often as our breakfast whiskey. Not something that we should have necessarily in place of breakfast, but something that is sort of light, fresh. We call light and bright, something that's quite approachable, and sort of go down quite a soft whiskey with hopefully people would agree quite a bit of flavour and complexity to it, but something that could, if you had a special occasion or for a good reason for it, if you were to have this with breakfast, you're going to the races that day, or you've got a flight, or whatever it might be. Hopefully, it's something that you could start the day with and not ruin your afternoon and need a nap or anything along those lines. Mick, was the first time you tried this after having joined, or was it before?
No, before. Obviously, long time Mackmyra fan before joining the company. So it was probably one of the first actual Mackmyra drams that I actually tried. Right. So we're probably talking about 4, going on 5 years ago now, something like that.
Okay, yeah. See, for me, I think I tried this once before joining, and maybe once or twice actually. Now I think about it, because I found it at a couple of different festivals when I first discovered Mackmyra back in 2018, I think it might have been. So should I talk a little bit about what Brooks Whisky, like the Brooks distillery and where this sort of came about? Can you touch on that a bit? Yeah. Yes. I'll just have a quick look at George's comment there. So girlfriend likes it very much. Well, lovely jubbly. Some peppery notes, bit of citrus. Yeah. Perfect for a light summer evening. Yeah, basically this is a summery dram. And Mick, there's something that you do every so often with the Brooks Whisky that might make it quite nice for summer as well. What is it?
More times often than not these days, Rich, since I discovered it. And that's just get yourself a sample bottle, a 50 ml, 100 ml sample bottle, whatever like that. Pour some of the Brooks Whisky into there, and then pop it in the freezer for a couple of hours. When you pour that after that, you notice that the liquid changes quite a lot. The viscosity becomes a lot thicker. That makes the mouthfeel a lot thicker and a lot fresher, and very nice and cooling, especially for a warm day like we've had not too long ago. There we had that straight stretch of really nice days. Perfect out of the freezer for that one, guys. As it warms through in your mouth, each individual tasting note starts to come through at its relevant temperature where it's best, and it really is really good. It's a different way of drinking your whiskey as well, and one I highly recommend.
Yeah, it's the texture that comes with it is excellent, and I'm all about texture in whiskey for sure. Yeah, so Brooks Whisky, Mick's mentioned that 2002, and I showed you that sort of a bit of the picture on the front of the bottle. We moved into the Brooks distillery. That is situated in a place called Mackmyra, which is this sort of little island, a river island basically, and about 20 miles to the west of Yavla, where the Gravity distillery now is. You can see it's the white building here with the red brick towards the foreground of the shot. That's a big stable behind it, that red building. There's been a number of things over the years, but yeah, a mill, for the most part. Lots of industry has been in there, different types of industry has been in there, until we moved in and started making whiskey in our first sort of forever home. And when we did move in, Mick mentioned very briefly in the intro that whilst we were in a series of our founders' sheds, basically, sort of moving from garden to garden. When we moved to the Brooks distillery is when we got our first big, actual stills, and we're able to start, producing enough whiskey to compete on, in the local market in Sweden, and gradually into, sort of the international markets as well, which is when we were able to start exporting to, neighbouring countries and the UK as well. The still that we had before moving into Brooks was a little 100 litre handmade copper still that our founders, here we go, as a picture, had welded together themselves. They got took an example basically of a still from a sort of a local agricultural museum, and then fabricated their own still. So we were making a tiny amount of whiskey to begin with. The first sort of 3 years we're experimenting with different distillation times and temperatures and barley and all sorts of different stuff, coming up with trying to find something that they were happy with. And then when we moved into the Brooks distillery, they took what they'd worked out and done the formula, worked out what it needed to be then in these larger stills and things as well, and started making a proper amount of whiskey, 10,000 and 7,000 litres in size, and from the best people in the game, I would say, Mick. If I'm sure you probably agree.
Very much regarded as the best people in the game, really.
So Forsyths of Scotland, they're at the forefront of making copper pot stills, and a huge waiting list now for them with the boom and all the new distilleries that have been opening up over the last sort of 10 or 15 years. Us having started, sort of the idea was formed in 98, production began in 99, but that, I suppose, that was the first. That was with the small still, I should say, actually. So 2002, but 2002 sort of just a few years before distilleries began to pop up again, so we didn't have to wait too long for ours, thankfully. And we were in the Brooks distillery all the way from 2002 to 2011 when the Gravity distillery was completed. 2011, 2012, I think there was a slight overlap between being finished and production beginning. And then we'll talk a bit more about the Gravity distillery with the Mac in the next dram, because that is, I think, if anyone's heard of us before, I know that George has commented and said he's been aware of us before, tried one or two things. I think you might have said, George, and but not the core range in its entirety. I think the Bodas mine and the Gravity distillery are the sort of two things that we are known for from those who do know us, because I think they are just undeniably interesting, and for want of a better term, cool things, I think, if you ask me, in my opinion as well. So and the whiskey that we're drinking this evening is from the Brooks distillery, just sort of closing off on that note. So Mick, any comments or thoughts of yourself before we move in to Matt? Do you want to answer? Do you want to answer that? I'll let you take that, Mick.
So the reason it was made at 41.4 was to keep it below. It's for a tax reason to start off with, because the higher the alcohol, the higher tax you pay. We wanted Brooks whiskey to be more available to people, for a wider audience at a lower cost. But we do have our newest release, and that's our newest moment, should I say? Which that is our newest release. So Brooks Whiskey Deluxe, which is at
it's one he made earlier,
46.6. So this is the grown-up version. So it's the same cask makeup, but from older whiskies, and this is at 46.6. You mentioned cask strength there, George, as well, and cask strength's a bit of a difficult one to do, really, because our natural cask strength is quite low. So when we talk about cask strength, people are assuming high 50s, early 60s, all that sort of stuff. Some of our highest cask strength stuff sits at 50% ABV at 12 years old, and that is natural cask strength. So that's not too. The 46.6 is not too far off of that.
Yeah, I think Angela said that she only brought the Brooks Deluxe down something like 0.2 or 0.3.
Yeah, it was bare min.
Yeah, so cool. All right, well, should we move on to the Mac?
Let's. So you'll notice Mac with its bright blue. It's bright blue. It stands out in the back bar absolutely beautifully, and it's designed for that back bar in mind. But we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. It is 40% ABV. Okay, it only matured in American oak casks as well, and a majority of fills. Good evening, Craig. Not a problem, George. So, tasting notes in general. This is probably as I don't want to say basic because that gives the wrong impression. But this is probably as simple as Mackmyra gets. Do you know what I mean? It's there. It's 40%. It's designed for the back bar. It has got a bit of colouring in it to make it look dark because, you know, when we first started it, it is young whiskey. It is younger than we've got. It has got a little bit older as we've got older as well. But on average, probably about 6 years old in Mac. But for consistency across all markets, etc., there is a bit of colouring in there for consistency. It adds nothing to the flavour whatsoever. It's designed to sit out there, be on the back bar, accessible. Thank you, Craig. Better word than basic. Thank you very much. Yeah. I did say I didn't want to say basic.
Yeah, I mean, you could throw it. You could say bog standard if you wanted, Mick. If you're looking for something more poetic, or yeah. I think accessible. I think accessible is the right sort of word. But it was, as you were saying, it's designed to fit in at that price point. It was designed exactly how it is by design. It's meant to be at this sort of where it is.
It's meant to be on the back bar. It's meant to go into cocktails, but also at the same time, it's really good by itself. Do you know what I mean? I like making highballs with this, with a sparkling apple and pear juice. It's absolutely beautiful, nice, over ice, nice and long, beautiful. But I also like it as a dram in its own right. It's just those orchard fruits, bang, straight up the nose, straight away, which is what we're known for at Mackmyra. That American oak influence, so like first and second fill American oak, so it's not massively spicy or anything like that. For a 40% whiskey, it's got a great mouthfeel. It actually feels more on the mouth than the 40% would give way to. Rich, what do you reckon?
I think, yeah. Would you say that mouthfeel is going to come quite in large part from the casks that we use, being new and first fill American oak? And they've only been used by us, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so that you're going to get lots of wood sugars, sort of lignins, things that sort of become wood sugars. You'll find lots of that in white American oak, in stark contrast to European oak and Swedish oak in particular, that we'll talk about and do a bit of a comparison between the two when we get to it. But yeah, so there's lots of vanillas and caramels for me in this.
Yeah.
Pear, like caramelized pear and the things, perhaps a bit of that. But orchard fruits, as you said, and that is for people who haven't heard us sort of saying it before, when we talk about our spirit character, you know, what the liquid is like before it goes into casks and starts taking on influence and flavors from those, you know, from the wood. The spirit character, the new make would have, you know, orchard fruits, in simple terms, of course, you know, not being too broad, but orchard fruits, warming spices, gentle, more often than not, sort of spices, and then a sort of herbaceous, sort of earthy undertone, sort of tying it together and adding a bit of sort of roundness and complexity to the sweeter notes, you know, that you would have from orchard fruits, for example, as well.
Yeah.
So and I think here in this, the type of cask that we've used just sort of emphasizes some of those fruits.
That's where it sits best. So this was our very first single malt produced at our brand new distillery. Or, well, I say brand new, it's 10 years old now. But our new distillery, the Grythyttan Distillery. And actually, the Grythyttan Distillery is built on a foundation of Brooks Whisky. So that's another reason we talk about Mac after Brooks, because for our new distillery, there is actually a bottle of Brooks Whisky in the foundations underneath the distillery, which I think is phenomenal. So we are literally, the Grythyttan Distillery is literally built on the strength of Brooks. So, like we've said already, began production in 2011. As Rich alluded to earlier as well, it is 35 meters tall, over 7 floors. It's got that quite unusual shape. The very top part and the bit that makes it jut out is the sky bar, and it works from top to down, and that's because we use gravity. So we use a lot less pumps. And we go down, as you can see from the graphic that's up at the moment. The new distillery, when we did our power trials, all that sort of good stuff, and efficiency trials, we were 45% more energy efficient than our old layout at Mackmyra Brook, which, that's not small numbers at all. Do you know what I mean? So using the natural force of the gravity, we bring it down from milling into mashing, into fermentation, into distillation, and then into the spirit-filled store, where we put it into the cask and it goes off for its nice sleep. So the heat actually, so we're all about the green distillery. We were voted and awarded the Whisky Magazine Rest of the World category Most Sustainable Distillery 2021, which is absolutely phenomenal to win. That's due in part because of what we do at Mackmyra. So the heat is captured and recycled around the process. We're fueled by bio pellets. Our draft, or the leftover mixture from fermentation, then becomes the bio pellets essentially. So we're currently the only gravity distillery in production, but there is one coming online in the next couple of years in the Portaleaf from the Portaleaf distillers. And like I said, it's saved 45% of energy in its first year. So I mean, that's just phenomenal straight off the bat, So to win that award, to do the things that we're doing, to be able to produce this whiskey and the manner that we produce it as well, it's fantastic.
Well, you mentioned at the top, Mick, that the three founding principles were Swedishness, innovation, and sustainability. I think something that sort of guided us, and the founders and the people that have come before us, of course, sort of over the last 20 years. But I think that Gravity Distillery speaks volumes to that principle of aiming for and trying to achieve sustainability and being carbon neutral, and just no energy there. Well, no with an asterisk next to it, of course, but very little energy there is wasted whatsoever. There's all sorts of different quite geeky points around the distillery where heat is captured, recycled, sent off elsewhere, as we were talking about a moment ago, and nothing leaves the distillery that isn't that we don't know about. Basically everything that we can is kept to make sure that everything is as sustainable as possible, and that's like a big ticket thing. But I'll just say on a very quick one, something that it's only a little thing, but I think little details in life tend to make up as much as one big thing if you can get a few of them together, for sure. But in 2001 when we started, or 2000 when we started our mailing list, rather than sending out stuff by the post to people's houses where you'll be able to capture a guaranteed very large market there, they said we're only going to do email only subscribing lists, which doesn't sound too radical for the way that we think these days, of course. But 20 years ago, email was obviously around, and lots of people sort of had it, but there wasn't the primary way of marketing in those days. That was far more radical than you might think, like now, doing only email marketing, and back in the day then. And there's lots of other little things as well that we do that are sort of that go with that sustainability. I'm sure as they pop back into my mind as we go through it, I might just jump in. I'll interrupt Mick at some point and say, and there's another one.
So we've talked about our sustainability. Obviously one of our pillars. We've obviously all of our products are Swedish as well. So all of our ingredients are Swedish. The water source, the barley, the yeast, even the peat when we talk about that later on. Everything we do is that Swedishness. So we've covered 2 out of 3. So with the Gravity Distillery, that was quite innovative as well. And that brings us on to dram number 3, Rich, really, from our seasonal range, which was quite, this is where we really, really do get to the heart of what Angela does so well, and this is where really what we're known for more these days, where we can really expand on our innovation, Rich.
Yeah, definitely. As I'm pouring this now, pop in the comments and let us know what your thoughts were on the Mac. If you liked it, George, did your girlfriend like it? Did anyone else that's joining us enjoy it or not? Or let us know what your thoughts were, and I'll talk a bit about this. You said, Mick, then about one of the things we're known for is the sort of the innovation side, and whiskies like this, sort of seen or deemed to be on the innovative side of things. I wanted to say that a moment ago, but I thought I'd leave it off and build when we got here. So that's perfect timing. So when I said Bodas Mine and the Gravity Distillery, most people sort of know that about us. Sort of these big things. But the innovative side of making whiskey and releasing whiskey is the third thing, and probably the primary thing. I think that's the thing that catches most people's eye, or many people's eye anyway, before then learning about the distillery and the mines that we have as well. So Björksav, as Micky probably more correctly pronounced earlier, means birch sap in Swedish. So we've been rambling on there for a moment about innovation this, innovation that. So we use lots of different types of casks, not just lots of casks in the recipe, as I mentioned earlier, but because we aren't, not to say hindered, but that is what I mean. We're not held back by rules, for example, that the SWA might have, and lots of good reason for some of that. But it does, for good or for worse, stifle innovation with those decisions, or at least limits what they can do. Limits, I think, is probably a fairer way of describing it. So because we're not beholden to them, we can use lots of different types of casks in our whiskey creation. So this one, birch sap wine, Micky and I learned about birch sap wine more or less when this was announced and we started hearing about it. Before, birch sap wine, is there such a thing? There is. It's very popular in Sweden and different parts of Northern Europe. So birch sap wine casks have been used, and other innovative types that I'll touch on very briefly so we can focus on this whiskey. We've had a green tea cask whiskey before, and last year I think we're basically sold out of that now. You can only find that in the wild now, and lots of other different types of casks as well, cherry wine casks and things as well that you wouldn't tend to see used elsewhere. So birch sap wine and this whiskey in particular is part of our seasonal range. Mick's explained or touched on earlier. We've got three ranges: the core range, which all four of the other whiskies this evening make up. We've got our seasonal range, we've got our moment range. This falls into the seasonal, so they're limited editions. They come out, we have 2 released per year, always something new. One will come out around spring, summer, one will come out around autumn, winter, and they'll have something to do, or they'll be their vibe or their profile will be sort of in tune with the prevailing season. And this one came out, this is our spring summer release, probably sort of focused on the spring, I thought at first, but now that summer is definitely, with the heat wave we've been subjected to where I've been the last 10 days, this is a dram that you could actually still have. This and the Brooks whiskey, I think, will go down quite well still. So birch sap wine, please let us know if you ever tried any birch sap wine in the comments. Be curious to know. It's something you can only harvest birch for its sap for about 2 weeks a year in the run-up when sort of spring is springing. All the sap is stored in the roots over the tree's dormant months over the winter season, and then as spring's coming in, the sap starts to rise through the trunk to go out to the branches, to sort of help create shoots and leaves and things. So you've got a 2-week window as that's happening where you're able to tap in. The sap that comes out is not like Jurassic Park, thick sort of amber, slow moving, like syrup or treacle sort of sap. It's almost like water and very similar in profile to perhaps coconut water. There's a drying bitterness to it, but with a little sweetness behind it. But because birch sap itself is so low in sugars, it's very difficult to ferment. So there's quite a technical process into being able to ferment it into wine. So there's lots of craft needed. The people that we work with, and we've worked with before in the past on a number of different releases, is a Swedish artisan winery called Grythyttan Vin. Mick, I think I've said that about right. Grythyttan.
It's pretty much the way I pronounce it, mate. I'm sorry, in that case, we're probably both wrong, Rich.
Yeah, it's there or thereabouts. So Grythyttan Vin, and they have the skills required basically to turn birch sap into wine. And the birch sap wine itself is, has a profile similar to what I described for the sap. So some bitterness to it, but remember, bitter can be the difference between dark chocolate and milk chocolate. Not necessarily bitter, and you don't want to come back to it. Bitter can be good, especially when you're looking for balance and things. But yeah, so some bitterness to it, a little dryness to it, but a little sweetness to it as well. Those 3 principal sort of things coming in, and hopefully some of that profile people will find, because that's the objective of this whiskey, or one of them anyway. People will be able to find that sort of profile in here. So the seasonals, the moment whiskies, to start there, the upper echelon whiskies that we have, £110 a bottle or so, not cheap stuff, as Mick said, a glass every now and then to celebrate something. or if you've had a tax rebate or something, and you've had something special, something along those lines. They're about sort of a wood-driven profile. So you need to find that Mackmyra spirit character there. You mentioned in a narrow sense earlier, orchard fruits, spices, and sort of an earthy herbal undertone. But the wood is what leads most of those whiskies. So if it's our rum influenced one, if it's another version of a Björksav one that we've got with here we go is a few things there. So that's the Caribbean, the rum there. That's Mac the cat in the middle there. A little Mac, or Mac the kitten, probably a cat now. To the left of it, we've got Fjellmark and then Efra over there as well. One of the moments is Prestige, where the wood-driven side of it is through champagne casks. Obviously not champagne casks, because you can't, champagne, bubbly champagne isn't in casks, but the wine that goes into making champagne from Filippone. But so they're wood-driven, not too wood forward or anything, hopefully, but wood driven. But the seasonals are about having our spirit character at the forefront still, with some influence of the prevailing season and the influential casks there. So hopefully people can still recognize this. The idea is that you can recognize it very much as a Mackmyra dram, but with some of that sort of gently sweet, little drying perhaps on between the palate and the finish, a little sort of drying bit there that will be the wine influence that we've got, and then hopefully a bit of a sort of a juicy, actual finish at the end there. And texture-wise, Mick, we talked about texture earlier. You like your Brooks whiskey in the freezer for the texture and the other things that you mentioned, but this for me has had an excellent texture from the start. What your
I quite like it out of the fridge. I'm a big fan of it out of the fridge. It just gives it that beautiful freshness, a nice crispness to it. I like it at room temperature and that as well. I think George is a bit spot on with his last tasting notes there. So even though you can taste the alcohol a bit more, the fruity notes, especially some pineapple, brilliant. And the vanilla stand out. So we really enjoyed it. Nice one. Happy with that. That's fantastic. Yeah. And I get a bit of a menthol on the back of the palate on this one as well. So just a bit of when you breathe in a little bit, you get that nice freshness in your mouth you get from having a menthol sweet type thing. So I get a little bit of that on the go as well. This is, again, 2 years ago, Appleblom, a Calvados cask that we used for our seasonal, sold out in just about 2 years. Last year's green tea, we've sold out from our own personal in just over a year. Björksav, we don't have any left in our warehouses. We've only got it left in our online shop. And there's not a lot of that left as well. So guys, remember the deal that we've got on. Buy a bottle of Björksav and get 40% off one of the core range using Björksav 40 at the checkout. But be quick about it, because there's not much Björksav left. Short of that, then you'd have to go out to our retail partners around the country. So if you're not successful on our online shop, we do have retail partners up and down the country that that should be so shop local for those guys and that as well.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think Mick and I try not to do too much sort of like whiskey peddling when we do our whiskies, but I think we'd be doing everyone a disservice if we didn't highlight how this got 4 months. 4 months. This is, as you said, it took 2 years to sell some of the older ones, and as we've moved through, as we've grown in the UK, 4 months. That green tea, when we sold out of green tea 3 or 4 weeks ago, we all thought, "Oh, good Lord, we've sold out of that in a year and a few months." A year, basically a year and 2 months, I think it was. And then to have Björksav sold out now. It is. Yeah, so we've got no more left to ship to any of our retail partners. It's just what's available on the web store, and I think there are a few of them, 20 odd bottles left. I think there were at the time, that was a week ago. So who knows what's there now?
Bully's comments before we jump into dram number 4.
Go on, yeah. Well, and let's have some tasting come through as well from anyone else that might have some ready. But you take it away, Mick.
No, so Bully's saying it's like biting into a Granny Smith apple, but with a nice gingery sweetness, and loves the finish. Yeah, absolutely spot on. You do get that nice, lovely, crisp freshness up front, I find, and yeah, you do get a nice bit of warming spices as it comes towards the back of the palate. Yeah, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I couldn't agree more with that, really.
Yeah, nice. I think have we had a look at George's comment as well? She said, even though I can taste the alcohol a bit more, the fruity notes, especially some pineapple, bit of tropicalness, that's good. Well, for me at least it is. I hope that you enjoy pineapple and tropical notes, George, and the vanilla stand out. So we really enjoyed it, him and his girlfriend, it sounds like. So awesome, good to hear. So I think with this, this is 46.1% ABV. So this is
we forgot to mention that.
I think I did forget to mention that. Sorry, yeah. So I'll say that because I think George actually asked earlier about the ABV of Brooks Whisky. This is where the larger part of our whiskies, our range, almost across the board, sit at 46.1%. The first two that we had are not necessarily anomalies, but they are. That's not a normal thing for us to do something below 46.1% ABV. That's where the sweet spot is for us. As you know, there's no chill filtration, and if we did mention earlier, I think we did touch on it a bit. We've got no added colouring in any of our whiskies aside from a little bit that's gone into the Mac, as we tried to explain or make a case for earlier, to help it compete at the level that it is. Up on a shelf against some quite dark, not always naturally dark whiskies as well, priced around 35 odd pounds. So that needs to sort of compete with them, but everything else non-chill filtered and natural colouring to it. So if you can get a bit more alcohol there, it's probably because there's a bit of a jump up. And if people haven't already, one thing that Mick and I like to do is try and dram neat for the first time, so we can see what we've got in front of us, and then add some water either to taste, to your own taste, I mean, or to experiment and see what you think about it. And I think that's the beauty, Mick, of having 50ml samples. If you haven't poured them already,
you've got plenty there to play around with. Yeah,
loads left. So I think there's not many people that do it. I know we're not the only ones, but there aren't many people that do 50ml samples. And I think whenever I'm taking part in a tasting and I get something so big, I'm always very happy about that, because that's a lot of whiskey there to then play around with and experiment and see what you think. So yeah, great. Right, well, let's wrap up on the Björksav. Anyone has any questions or any thoughts, please pop them in the comments, but otherwise, Mick, if you can take us into Svensk Ek.
Svensk Ek, yes. So Svensk Ek, or Swedish oak, as it's translated to. Again, it's the Mackmyra magic number, 46.1% ABV. Straight away, guys, you're going to get something different, okay? Obviously, Björksav was quite different to what you're used to. But again, we're gonna play about with something different here, and that is going to be the introduction of Swedish oak in the cask recipe. So we've taken maturing whiskey from first and second fill ex-bourbon casks, and we've taken 10% of that liquid and finished it for a minimum of 18 months in virgin Swedish oak casks. And that really does do something different to the whiskey. Now you think only 10%? Yeah, only 10%. But once you try it, once you try it, you're going to think, oh, hang on a minute, yeah, that's the spot right there. So instantly you're going to find that this is one is quite more robust than the previous three, even a bit more, well, definitely a bit more robust than the Björksav. With the Björksav is nice, fruit forward driven, quite easy going. I'm not going to say you're going to find harshness with this, but there's definitely going to be like a spicier element with this. So that's the introduction of Swedish oak. So with Swedish oak, it's got a lot less wood sugars in it than American oak does, because Swedish oak, given where it grows up, etc., it grows a lot more slowly than American oak, and a lot cooler and more changeable climates than American oak generally does as well. So that gives us richer, more bitter, deeper, heavier flavors than American oak does. So I akin it to like white pepper and like sandalwood. And just that 10%, you're going to notice a difference straight away, guys. Really, it's really, really powerful in its influence, you know. But oak's been around in Sweden for a very long time. But in the 1830s, the king of Sweden at the time ordered the planting of hundreds of thousands of trees to be used for future warship production. But you know, these trees, take like 150 plus years before they're ready. But then, 30 years after they started, still ships began to sail the seas. So when in like the late 80s and stuff like that, when the guardians of the trees on this thing there turned around and said, "Well, that's your trees ready, guys. Come and build your warships." Obviously, everybody just burst out laughing. Wooden warship. What's this guy on about? So no. But the good thing is, those trees haven't gone to it. Not that trees ever go to waste, shall we say? They were put to good use. So when they were ready, they were chopped down and they were air dried and used for great things like furniture, flooring, all sorts of things. But more importantly for us, and this environment that we're talking about now, is they're really, really good to use as cask staves. So we chop them down, we put them into planks, and then we air dry that wood, naturally air dried, not force air dried, but naturally air dried for 3 summers. So that can be just over 2 years, depending on when it was laid down, basically. And honestly, so David Anderson, our cooper, absolutely fantastic guy. There he is, handsome chap that he is. He makes all of our casks by hand. It's quite a laborious process to make these Swedish oak casks. And he also takes 200-litre casks to make them to 30-litre casks as well. But the majority of the 30-litre Swedish oak casks he makes from scratch and can only turn out about 4 a day. That's how much time and effort the process that it goes into. So when we do release Swedish oak casks in our 30-litre cask program, we don't tend to do that many of them. But no, ladies and gentlemen, please let me know what you think to the differences of Svensk Ek. I think that extra layer, that pepperiness on the finish, Rich, really does bring something a bit rye-ish to the party.
Yeah. That's something probably quite good to compare it to rye, having that extra bit of sort of pepperiness to it. So George there, and I'll just sort of say before going into George's comments, whatever people find in their tasting notes, it's right. If you find something there, you can put a word to it or a feeling or a colour. I've heard people do that before. Whatever it is right. There's no wrong answers.
What whiskey?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
What whiskey? He doesn't see flavour profiles. He sees colours.
Yeah,
which is phenomenal. There's a proper word for it and everything, right? But it's phenomenal. So yeah, what he does with that, I think it's brilliant. But anyway, back to Mackmyra stuff.
back to that. So on the tasting note side of things, so I say all of that. Whatever you find is right, and it's also personal. There's no wrong answers. All of that being said, I agree with everything that George has got there. So reminded him of toasted oak, toasted bread, spicy notes, and hints of toffee. That toffiness, toffee is like, and for me at least, there's a sweetness to toffee, obviously, but it's not very like a confectionery, like a sugary sweetness. And obviously sugar to it, right? Don't get me wrong, but it's on the darker side of sweetness, like the more rounded side of sweetness, like the less sweet side of it. If I'm trying to find a way of sort of just describe, but so the toffee in here, so that sweetness there, I think toffee is bang on for it.
Absolutely spot on. I mean,
the things that we talk about in the range. I think for me in here, there's they're still present, but they're now, because I think of the Swedish oak's influence, they're like baked apple, cooked apple, and some cinnamon. So I always think apple pie, but baked apple, that's sweet, is sweetness, but it's not as sweet as it was in the Brooks Whisky, for example. And I think that element of Swedish oak sort of tones that sweetness down and rounds it out, so it's still there, but not quite as sharp sweet as it was earlier. And I think for me that the complexity that brings, I think is fantastic. This is one of the drams that I had quite a bit of before joining and Mackmyra, and this is I always enjoy this one. It's you used the word robust earlier, Mick. This is robust.
It's massively so. Massively
great
so.
texture, great texture. The sweetness, I think, is spot on, and the spiciness, that pepperiness, as you described, a bit like rye. I think that's bang on as well. And that again, looking for balance, because Angela's always looking for balance in her whiskies, in the whiskies that she creates and releases. And I think this finds that balance very well for me, and hopefully for others as well. We're enjoying it, but
it does stand up quite well to a drop of water. So if you're finding that spiciness, that a little bit too much, and some people do, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're still enjoying those front forward flavors. Just literally a teardrop or two of water will knock that spiciness down and allow the more fruit flavor to come across. It also translates really well into what you traditionally call like a rye based cocktail. So a Manhattan. I quite like a black Manhattan, but I've also made a twist on the black Manhattan and put svensk ek in it and made a black Stockholm, if you will, or a black Jävla. So using 2 parts svensk ek, 1 part Amaro Montenegro, 2 dashes of orange bitters, stirred down over ice and then poured into a nice chilled champagne coupe. Bliss.
Nice. Sounds good. Mick, by the way, for anyone who hasn't joined us before, Mick's our cocktail man, basically. Is whenever we do our season 1 is finished. Season 2 will be coming back to a screen near you soon at some point. Our virtual pub that we used to do once a week. Mick would always start off the pub session, the show, with a cocktail, and usually with some mint involved as well that you've got on your
100%. 100%. So for season 2, there's a new mint plant in the mix as well. The old one that just got too pillaged. So we've had to start afresh with the mint plant. So that's growing on nicely, all ready for us to start season 2, Rich.
Good stuff. Glad to hear it, mate. I think I've got a basil plant on the windowsill that I brought back from near death a couple of weeks ago. It was looking very sorry for itself, and I think it's back in the game. So I'll just speak to our colleague Matt, who we've got in the background, that's pulling all the strings this evening, and is the person popping up the pictures and comments on the screen. Matt, if you could please find Mickey's favourite picture of David, because I think I was waiting for it to come up, but it's hot stuff. That picture, if you could find that. Here we go. This is Mickey's favourite photo of his entire life.
Absolute man crush picture right there. Absolute man crush picture right there. You know what I mean? How cool's your job got to be where you can just like kick about holding a 30-litre cask of fire? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
He'll do 4 of those in a day as well, won't he?
Exactly.
Yeah. You think, yeah. Exactly. If he's doing them immediately after coopering the cask, that is, yeah. Fifth generation? Fourth, fifth generation of Fourth.
It was his great granddad, yeah. So 4th.
Nice. So let us know, please, anyone that's joining us, that's near a keyboard, that can type on a phone or wants to. Let us know what your thoughts are, what your favourites might have been as we're moving through, and do you like this one more than the others? Do you not like it at all? Do you let us know your thoughts and tasting notes if possible. And Bully, your patronage was we're very grateful for your patronage at the end throughout as well. So Craig needs more fire in his day job. Yeah, Craig, well, we can give you David's details. Perhaps you can apply. You'll have to learn how to speak a bit of Swedish, I'm afraid to say.
Craig runs an absolutely fantastic bottle shop and whiskey specialist shop in Kirkintilloch, just on the outskirts of Glasgow. So if he was to have fire during his day, that means a lot's gone wrong. So no, Craig, not me fire during your day, okay?
Well, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed you get the right type of fire, the fire that you actually wish for, Craig. Exactly. Hopefully so. So
differences, Rich. Let's go on with Svensk.
Mate, that was an excellent segue into Swedish smoke. Yeah. So is this my one? Is this my one to talk about?
It's you, sir. Yes, you two round us up for James.
So Svensk rock. If you say it as Mick and I did for the first good few months of being here. So it means Swedish smoke. If anyone hasn't picked up on that one already. Part of our core range. This is it comes in a 50cl bottle. compared to the usual 70 cl bottles that everything else that we have is in. Reason for that, and gives me a good reason to talk about the sort of the background of sort of Swedish smoke, or our whiskey, I should say. We malt and peat all of our own barley for our smoky whiskey, basically our smoky distillate, our smoky new make spirit. Reason we did that was back in 1999 when we started making whiskey. There was no maltsters, they'd be called, people that malt barley for use in, it could be food, breweries, whatever it might be. Nobody produced a peated malt, malted barley. If we weren't to make it ourselves, we would have had to have it, shipped in from Scotland, for example, or from, somewhere in England that might make it, or I think there's one or two countries around the world that do, but Scotland primarily. But that would have meant that we wouldn't have been able to achieve that founding principle of Swedishness at the beginning, which is something that, given that, there'd been no whiskey made in Sweden for 70 years, and we're sort of, the first coming here to do it, or, they're doing it. They saw it as their responsibility, basically, to try and set some sort of precedent, or at least make sure that the first, single malt whiskey that was being made at that time would be as Swedish as it possibly could be. Like, could be no more Swedish if it tried, basically. So the idea of ordering in barley from another country is something they just didn't want to do. I will say there are plenty of distilleries in world whiskey that do that. I think there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever, if you ask me. As long as you're distilling and maturing, in my own personal opinion, if you're distilling and maturing that whiskey in your country, in whichever country you are making it, then that for me is good enough. That's it's from whichever country you might be from. However, that being said, I do think it takes it, turns it up to 11. The fact that, the founders said from the very start, no, we're not going to do that. And they had no experience brewing, they had no experience malting, they had no experience distilling. They were engineers, so a bit of wherewithal about them, a bit of nous maybe, but no experience. So they basically had to get some advice and start just trial and error, making, malting their own barley. So we built, here we go. So on the right hand side, that's the first. I assume the first, one of them, the first sort of malting bin. So that lid would be lifted, and in there would be a couple of feet worth of barley to be malted, get warm, humid, help that malting process start. And then on the left hand side, in what looks like a dog kennel, a duck house in the middle of a pond or something, is our original peat smoker. So, fire in the bottom, peat going in the bottom. We can see that little sort of flap, the door between the side Mackmyra and where the roof begins. That's where the barley will be put in. Peat underneath to smoke the barley so that we can get our smoky recipe. And as a very quick aside for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about of any of this, to get smoky flavoured barley, you'll dry that malting barley to stop the germinating process, stop it malting any further. You need to dry it, and traditionally lots of people used to use peat as their heat source, and that would infuse that barley with smoke, and then that flavour carries throughout the process. So, and we wanted to make smoky whiskey as well as unsmoked, unpeated, because there's a huge appetite for both in Sweden, massive appetite. So, it was very important that we were making both. So fast forward from you doing all that stuff, in kennels and not quite, but the bins and things. We now at the Grythyttan distillery have our own purpose-built malting building, malting floors that we use, and this is Håkan. He's been with us for about 8 or 9 years or so, I think now, who's our head smoker. So he's standing in the front, maybe 10% of a big shipping container there where our furnace is situated. He's holding a door open to the remaining, let's say 90% of that shipping container, which will be filled with malted barley. And then that container just gets flooded and filled with smoke to get our smoky barley created. So the peat as well, Craig, is Swedish peat. So it comes from a place called the Karin Mossen bogs. It's a forest area about 30-40 kilometers or so from the distillery, just to the southwest. So relatively local, about as local as we could get our peat to be. But not only do we make and malt and peat our own barley, the peat itself is Swedish as well. So a bit of a different peat to what I think most people that might be on the newer side perhaps, or haven't explored peat that much. I think most people, Mick, would you probably agree, would associate peaty whiskey initially at least with the southeastern Islers, the Lagavulin and Ardbeg, Lefroig, with a medicinal, TCP sort of notes and things to it. That's not very. I think you can pick up a little bit of that in here, maybe, but it's a drier smoke here rather than a medicinal smoke, a more smoky smoke. We describe it as, probably not. I think probably someone could do it better than that, but a smoky smoke might do. So everything is Swedish, from the ingredients to our production method with it, and it meant that we could keep that Swedishness side. Now, on the innovation side, we do something a bit different, very different with our peating process that anyone else in the world does. Although I think Smorgon put juniper branches in their peat now.
Not
Smorgon being one of the other ones. I think one of the other Swedish distilleries does do something different with their peat as well, and I think it is juniper branches. I have to put a pin in that. If anyone who's got fast fingers and can Google it, please let me know. But up until that they came about, we were the only people doing it. But anyway, so the innovative side of it, and Swedishness, another bit to boot, is the inclusion of juniper branches into our peating process. So what we can see here, juniper, so it's not berries. It's not a gin smoked, barley. It is just the branches to it. I think Mick might be about to see if we can see on the label sort of imposed.
It's on the box.
Yeah, I think it is on the box. Actually,
on the box.
But we can see we've put sort of embossed onto the box there, the juniper branches there. So on the innovative side, that's because innovative. No one else is doing it. We're trying to do new things, and not just for the sake of doing something new. We want to do something new, but also the Swedish identity that comes with and that we get from that inclusion into the peat. Is thousands of years worth of Scandinavian and Swedish, but Scandinavian history of adding things like juniper branches to fires to add a bit of flavour to meat and fish that they're curing for the long winter months. Not many shops that you could just nip to on the weekends 2,000 years ago. You really had to think about how to get in the winter months. Get flavour into your foods. It's not just the same thing.
And for the preservation purposes of smoking and drying as well.
Yes, exactly. Yes, you needed to smoke it, and you might as well try and make some flavour in there at the same time while doing it. So I think that in terms of a bit of an explanation about Swedish smoke and what we do, I think that's probably enough of a monologue from me. So I'll move, and Mick, I'll ask you and people at home what they think about flavours and tasting notes. What do you think about this compared to a sort of standard peated whiskey?
Nice. Oh, nice one, George. Nice. George is winning for today. That's brilliant. For me, this is always a smokier version of bacon frazzles. I'm sure other bacon flavoured crisps are available, but specifically bacon frazzles, that it really ticks those boxes for me. So again, with foam bananas from Brooks and bacon frazzles, what I mean? A lot of tasting notes come from childhood memories and all that sort of good stuff. It's all relatable. So you're not right and you're not wrong. You're always right and you're not wrong when it comes to your tasting notes. What you get is what you get. Tasting notes are all very, very personal, ladies and gentlemen. It's great. It's got that lovely chewable sort of nature to it as well,
I'm just laughing at Craig's comment. No, just before it came up, I spotted it.
Well, yeah. I can't say that. Do you know what I mean? But
Mick, we can. I think we can say that, mate. We're not the BBC. I think we don't know. Nobody's ever told us that we have to be fair and that we can't plug anything. So I'll just say, and maybe if anyone from, is it Smiths, is watching, who make frazzles and want to send me and Mick some free frazzles for plugging them.
I'm available for sponsorship. When we get the back in, Rich, I wouldn't mind having a box or a card.
We did want that.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Like Andy Smith,
frazzles, dry roasted nuts.
Yeah, like Andrew Smith did, a little brown dog. He had his scampi fries up, didn't he? Do you know what I mean? That was brilliant. So anything like that, yeah, fine, fire away. I'm sure we'll share. But no, ladies and gentlemen, honestly, so that's our 4 core range and a peek into our latest seasonal. Be fast if you do want a bottle of Björksav. There really, honestly, isn't much left. So because we're good guys, we're good guys. If you buy a bottle of Björksav from Mackmyra.com and you use the code Björksav40, we'll give you 40% off one of our full core range bottlings. So that's Mack, Brooks Whisky, Svensk Ek, or the latest one you're trying now, Svensk Grythyttan. A massive 40% off. I mean, that's quite the deal, quite frankly. And because it's like over 50 quid, I think that qualifies for free delivery in that as well. So,
yeah. Nice. So, yeah, Swedish smoke. Mick, any sort of any thoughts, anything you want to expand on with the Svensk look?
T-shirt, next day barbecue. Do you know what I mean? You've barbecued the night before. The next day, you've picked your T-shirt up on the floor and put it into the wash basket and that. Because, you've obviously had a couple of cans while doing the barbie or a couple of drums and that. Do you know what I mean? So clothes come off, ditch on the floor. You wake up the next morning, tidy up after yourself or whatever, and you pick your T-shirt up and you get it a wee smell. That smoking rich, but morning after, so it's died off a bit. That's what I always get on the nose and on the back of the palate with Svensk Grythyttan. It's lovely, it's pleasurable. And we often have people say, oh, no, I don't think I like this because I don't like peated whiskey. And me and Rich, we always say, well, you know what? Just for the minute, just give it a wee go, please. And you'll be surprised the amount of people that turn around and go, oh, I really do quite like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. We hear people say, they either say, and we see it in the comments on almost a regular, well, in fact, a regular basis, depending on whether it's one person on a tasting or two or three. Barbecue mix. Yeah, I think, Mick, you do owe us barbecue, I'd say.
I'm available.
We see people in the comments almost every tasting we do saying, I don't usually like smoky whiskey, but this is either, they might say this is all right, this is good, or actually I like this, whatever variation of that it might be. But usually catches some people at least, by surprise. My friend, when he first tried it, described it quite poetically, I would say, as on the nose anyway, sort of as campfire in the rain. The smoke to it, but like as you sort of almost like an echo of what you think smoky whiskey sort of is. It's a bit more gentle. It's definitely smoky. And for someone that's never drank smoky whiskey before, this could be extremely smoky. So don't just listen to us saying it's not. It's a bit more delicate than some of the other ones you might have tried or heard of. But this for me is a bit more sort of set back than what a smoky whiskey for the most part would be, or people would see. Cool. So that's probably, I think, it's probably about it on the Svensk look. That's our last dram of the evening. So I'll say if anyone does want to look at Mackmyra.co.uk, Mackmyra.com, have a look at our web shop, as Mick said, Björksav 40. We'll pop up a code on a banner flashing across it in a moment, I'm sure. Matt in the background will sort us out. So people can see, buy a bottle of that, you get 40% off one of the core range bottles. Any questions that people might have, and you haven't been fast enough to type it in the comments before we go in a moment, or reach out to us on social media, find us on social media, follow us, go on our website, subscribe to our mailing list, and you'll get told about other tastings that are coming and different special events that we're doing. We've been doing a lot of things with single cask tastings and stuff recently as well, so you subscribe to our mailing list and you'll be included in those notifications and things as well. So say, Mick, anyone that you want to say goodbye to before we go?
So guys, thank you very much for joining us. Tune in on the 19th of August, where I'll be hosting a tasting live, and for you good guys on that their YouTubes and Facebooks as well. But we'll actually have a proper live audience in front of us as well, live from the New Union in Kendal. So come and join us for that. That would be fantastic. To our regular flyers, so Craig, Bully, Tamara, thanks a lot for joining us again, guys. Honestly, it's brilliant to have you with us. And for a new joiner, George, hopefully we pronounced your name correctly. You've been absolutely fantastic with your tasting notes and your interaction. So please come and join us again, and please be one of our regulars, mate. We'd love to see you back again. So and that's it for me.
Yeah, no, very good. Yeah, George, just focus on you a bit there at the end. You said at the very beginning that you tried one or two before, maybe you hadn't tried the core range. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, you and your girlfriend. and everyone else that's joined in tonight. As Mick said, thanks very much, and we hope to see you all again soon at some point. And check out the links for that hybrid show that Mickey was talking about. We're going to be doing a bit more of that over the next year or so. You know, we're a bit of virtual here, a bit of real life there. Just sort of try and find a sensible, responsible line to toe as we go. So yeah, without much further ado, Mick, a pleasure as always. I'll speak to you on the morrow, I'm sure. Anyway, and yeah, everyone else, good evening, thank you, and good night. Cheers, and thank you, Matt, as well in the background. Cheers, Matt.
Skål.